Natural supplements may seem safer than prescription medications, but there are a few things to consider before you run out to the store and buy some. Supplements are regulated as foods and not as medications by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, otherwise known as the FDA. This means the manufacturers do not have to prove they are effective, nor do they have to provide safety information. Also, the amount of each ingredient may be inconsistent between products. There have been some instances where herbal supplements do not contain any of the herbs on their labels. Instead, they have been found to contain ingredients like powdered rice, asparagus, and houseplants, and in some cases, substances that could be dangerous to those with allergies. Natural supplements can cause side effects and can even cause you harm. Kava kava, used most often for anxiety, can lead to liver damage, including hepatitis and liver failure. Natural supplements can also interact with your medications. One good example is St. John's wort. St. John's wort is used most often for depression and can interact with multiple medications and ultimately can cause you harm. In addition, some supplements and/or vitamins can affect the way your body absorbs and gets rid of other medications. With this being said, when asked what medications you are taking, it is very important you mention any supplements and/or vitamins to your pharmacist and doctor. In addition, if you're looking to use a natural supplement, talk to your doctor or pharmacist about which ones are safe to use. It seems caffeinated drinks like 5-Hour Energy are available everywhere you look. Even though caffeine has been thought to keep you awake and alert, more is not always better. 5-Hour Energy shots contain fairly high amounts of caffeine. Like any caffeine product, these drinks can make you feel jittery, nervous, and dizzy. Common side effects include a fast heartbeat, a rise in blood pressure, headaches, and trouble sleeping. In addition, these shots contain the vitamin niacin, which may cause some people to experience flushing. This is caused by increased blood flow near the skin. A small number of deaths have been reported and associated with energy drinks, mostly from inappropriate use and overconsumption. The FDA continues to investigate reports of illness, injury, or death of people who took products marketed as energy drinks. A number of products that combine caffeine and alcohol have been removed over the years due to safety concerns. Ask your doctor and pharmacist any questions you may have about energy drinks. Recently, there has been a lot of hype regarding probiotics. But what are probiotics? Probiotics are good bacteria for your gut. They are found in yogurt, but are also sold separately. Probiotics are thought to help with digestion and offer defense against harmful bacteria, just like the existing good bacteria in your body. One reason that probiotics might be mentioned a lot is that they're thought to be linked to helping with multiple disorders. Research is still ongoing, but probiotics are being studied for preventing diarrhea caused by antibiotics, helping with intestinal infections, treating vaginal yeast infections, and treating irritable bowel syndrome. It is important to wait at least 2 hours after taking an antibiotic to take a probiotic that contains bacteria. Probiotics are considered a good option to look into since side effects are rare and they are easily added to people's diets. Anyone with a weakened immune system should avoid taking a probiotic because in rare cases they may develop an infection. If you're considering taking probiotics to prevent or treat a certain disorder, check with your doctor and pharmacist to be sure that they are right for you.
Dear 16-year-old me.
Dear 16-year-old me.
Dear 16-year-old me.
Please don't get that perm. It's not as awesome as you think it's going to be.
You have to actually practice in order to learn to play guitar.
Whiskey tastes even worse on the way up.
Dear 16-year-old me. There's going to be a new set of Star Wars movies. Don't watch them. They ruin everything.
Dear 16-year-old me. This is where they took the cancer out. It was something called melanoma.
It's called malignant melanoma.
Malignant melanoma.
Malignant? That's not a very friendly word.
You'll be diagnosed when you're 28.
18.
36.
29.
22.
It's a tumor that starts in your skin cells, the cells that give your hair and skin color.
It's not just skin cancer.
Well, it is.
Well, it is.
But not just the...
Cut it out and it'll be fine kind, unfortunately.
It's the kind that you have to catch before it spreads.
Because it spreads so fast.
So fast.
To places like your liver, your lungs, your brain.
Yours will be a really rare kind in your left eye, and that's when you'll find out.
That melanoma can show up on your tongue, the palms of your hands, and the soles of your feet.
Your doctors will tell you you're lucky that you caught it early.
Yours will tell you that you need aggressive treatment.
I'll have to tell you it might take a year of chemotherapy.
And you'll need to do some of the injections yourself.
Dear 16-year-old me,
You're doing okay.
You're strong.
But there are some things I want you to know.
I wish I'd known.
That one bad sunburn before you turn 18
Doubles your chances of developing melanoma.
That fair skin and red hair means that you're at a higher risk of getting it.
As if ginger people didn't have enough problems.
That you're at higher risk if you've got more than 50 moles.
And if you have a weakened immune system or a family history of skin cancer.
I want you to know the outlook is very good if we can catch it early.
But you have less than a 10% chance of surviving more than 5 years if we don't.
Dear 16-year-old me,
Spend more time with family. They mean everything.
If I had one piece of advice for you, don't start the tanning bed. I know you want a healthy glow, but it's going to double my chances of getting melanoma.
Sunscreen.
Yes, I agree. It's a huge pain in the ass, but so worth it. Please.
Your skin's like an elephant. It never forgets.
dear 16-year-old me, helping spread this message is how you'll honor Glenna's memory. At 16, she's already an incredible lifeguard. She loves the sun and the beach and tanning, but she just doesn't know.
She'll be diagnosed when she's 22 and will lose her battle when she's just 26.
I want you to know, because it's melanoma that's going to take the strongest man you know, your best friend, and the love of your life.
Dear 16-year-old me,
Don't be afraid. This isn't about being afraid.
I want you to be aware
that melanoma is a young person's disease.
It is the second most common cancer in children and teenagers, and one of the most common in young adults.
And it can be deadly.
I want you to know you're not helpless.
This is a cancer that shows itself
right there on the outside of you.
Start checking your skin.
Please check.
Get to know your skin.
Get to know your skin.
Start checking your skin.
If a new mole shows up,
Or if when you have, starts to change color,
Or size, or shape.
or feels different.
If something seems out of place, get your doctor to have a look as soon as possible.
Know what to look for and get help. These are all signs your skin could be developing cancer.
You brush your teeth every day, maybe even floss.
Okay, we both know you don't floss.
But just once a month, I want you to check.
It takes 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Dear 16-year-old me, I do realize you're not actually going to see this, but someone else will, and it'll make a difference to them.
Dear someone else.
Dear somebody else.
If you're watching this,
send it to a 16-year-old you care about.
Send it to anyone who was once 16.
Or soon will be 16. Send this.
And check yourself. Educate yourself.
You can download tools and information about melanoma here.
Share this link.
Tweet this link.
Post this to your Facebook.
I'm Katie, and it took me 19 years to figure out that I had Lyme disease. I'd always had health issues my whole life from when I was young, sinus problems, poor immune system. It was my freshman year of college. I kept getting pneumonia like every week or two. And then all of a sudden it was like 20 hours a day of sleep or I couldn't get up to move. I felt so out of control. I stopped going to my classes because when I was at my classes, I couldn't really process the information. I wasn't hearing the questions. I wasn't able to keep up with the reading. There was just something missing. There was no specific note that the doctor at Washington and Lee could give me because she didn't know what was wrong either. I had to go through at least 15 doctors. It started with pneumonia, walking pneumonia, chronic walking pneumonia, Epstein-Barr virus, mono, fibromyalgia, POTS, chronic fatigue syndrome, generalized anxiety disorder, and depression. I didn't know what it could be. So then having someone say, you need to see a psychiatrist, it was half, fuck you, no, but also, okay, this man has 8 degrees on his wall. And I certainly doubted in moments that I was making everything I was experiencing up. They made me feel like I wanted attention. I thought I was going to die. The suicidal thoughts crept in. I really think that what kept me going was wanting to see where the mystery went. I wanted the answer, and I kind of never lost sight that I would receive that eventually, and that I would prove somebody wrong. I'm stubborn, I'm real stubborn. It wasn't officially until a sports masseuse who was working on my body and, you know, hearing all of my trials and tribulations said, have you looked into this? I hear it's very hard to diagnose and you have to be very firm with doctors in order to get them to test for it. I was like, okay, here we go. And I went and I found any doctor that would take it seriously, one of whom diagnosed me and the other of whom treated me. And my doctor, who was taking this very seriously, held my hand for the first time since I had gotten sick and said, this is not easy and this is not straightforward, but I'm gonna try really hard and we're gonna figure this out for you. That moment of, this is what you have a name, you can write this down on your paperwork, you can tell this to loved ones, we have a path, and maybe it's not super clear and we're gonna have to switch around your medications a lot, but you have this thing and you have not been crazy this whole time. It was a stunning moment. It gave me the fuel that I needed to go forward with treatment for over a year with intensity. I would be throwing up so much, have no appetite, and look like complete shit. And I would just smile so much because I knew that the medication that was making me sick was doing something, and that's why I was getting sick. And it was this whole process in my brain, like a challenge. Like I was fighting these bugs that were in my body. Having a goal versus just going down and thinking that you're crazy. They're incomparable. And it gets easier the further I get away from my former self, because letting go of her has been very difficult. Hearing from doctors and hearing from loved ones is always reassuring, and getting an answer or getting support is what we all want, but no one will ever know what's going on inside of your body or going on inside of your brain unless you tell them. And in order to tell them confidently, you have to have been listening to yourself. Anything that seems abnormal to you, listen to it and remind yourself that you are worth paying attention to yourself. And if you don't understand and believe yourself, no one else will.
Jardiance is a prescription medication used to treat type 2 diabetes in adults. Jardiance is a sodium glucose cotransporter 2 inhibitor. These work by stopping the reabsorption of glucose by the kidney, increasing glucose excretion from the body, and lowering blood sugar levels. This medication comes in tablet form and is taken once daily in the morning with or without food. Common side effects of Jardiance include dehydration and urinary tract infections.
How to perform hands-only CPR. Cardiac emergencies can happen anywhere. Be prepared with a simple technique known as hands-only CPR. You can learn it in minutes, it's easy to remember, and it can help save a life. You will need the willingness to act and a few simple skills. Whenever possible, use disposable gloves when providing emergency care. Step 1. If you see someone suddenly collapse, Check the scene for safety and then see if the person responds to you by tapping them on the shoulder and shouting, "Are you okay?" Step 2. Briefly look for breathing. Step 3. If they don't respond, call or send someone to call 911 or the local emergency number right away. Step 4. If the person is not breathing or is gasping, prepare to give chest compressions. Kneel beside them and put the heel of one hand on the center of their chest. Place your other hand over that hand, lacing your fingers together. Position your shoulders directly over your hands, keeping your arms straight and your fingers off the chest. Step 5. Push hard and fast, at least 2 inches, then let the chest rise completely before pressing down again. Don't take your hands off the chest, just your weight. Step 6. Keep going. Do not stop compressions until the person shows an obvious sign of life like breathing. The scene becomes unsafe. An automated external defibrillator or AED is ready, you're too exhausted to continue, or a trained responder takes over. Step 7. Get training and encourage others to do so by taking an American Red Cross health and safety course. Knowing full CPR, chest compressions, and breaths will enable you to help in other emergencies such as drowning and choking. Every household should have at least one person trained in life-saving skills. Did you know? Most people who survive a cardiac emergency are helped by a bystander. To find your local Red Cross chapter, visit redcross.org.
In 1985, 16-year-old Douglas Casa ran the championship 10,000-meter track race at the Empire State Games. Suddenly, with just 200 meters to go, he collapsed, got back up, and then collapsed again on the final straightaway, with his body temperature at dangerous levels. He had suffered an exertional heat stroke. Fortunately, with immediate and proper treatment, he survived the potentially fatal episode and has since helped save 167 people in similar circumstances. From ancient soldiers on the battlefield to modern-day warriors on the gridiron, exertional heat stroke or sunstroke has long been a serious concern. And unlike classical heat stroke, which affects vulnerable people such as infants and the elderly during heat waves, exertional heat stroke is caused by intense exercise in the heat and is one of the top 3 killers of athletes and soldiers in training. When you exercise, nearly 80% of the energy you use is transformed into heat. In normal circumstances, this is what's known as compensable heat stress, and your body can dissipate the heat as quickly as it's generated, through cooling methods like the evaporation of sweat. But with uncompensable heat stress, your body is unable to lose enough heat due to overexertion or high temperatures and humidity, which raises your core temperature beyond normal levels. This causes the proteins in cell membranes to denature, creating cells that no longer function properly and begin to leak their contents. If these leaky cells proliferate through the body, the results can be devastating, including liver damage, blood clot formation in the kidneys, damage to the gastrointestinal tract, and even the failure of vital organs. So how do you diagnose an exertional heat stroke? The main criterion is a core body temperature greater than 40 degrees Celsius, observed along with physical symptoms, such as increased heart rate, low blood pressure and rapid breathing, or signs of central nervous system dysfunction, such as confused behavior, aggression, or loss of consciousness. The most feasible and accurate way to assess core body temperature is with a rectal thermometer, as other common temperature-taking methods are not accurate in these circumstances. As far as treatment goes, the most important thing to remember is cool first, transport second. Because the human body can withstand a core temperature above 40 degrees Celsius for about 30 minutes before cell damage sets in, it's essential to initiate rapid cooling on-site in order to lower it as quickly as possible. After any athletic or protective gear has been removed from the victim, place them in an ice water tub while stirring the water and monitoring vitals continuously. If this is not possible, dousing in ice water and applying wet towels over the entire body can help. But before you start anything, emergency services should be called. As you wait, it's important to keep the victim calm while cooling as much surface area as possible until emergency personnel arrive. If medical staff are available on site, cooling should continue until a core temperature of 38.9 degrees Celsius is reached. The sun is known for giving life, but it can also take life away if we're not careful, even affecting the strongest among us. As Dr. J.J. Levick wrote of exertional heat stroke in 1859, it strikes down its victim with his full armor on. Youth, health, and strength oppose no obstacle to its power. But although this condition is one of the top 3 leading causes of death in sports, it has been 100% survivable with proper care.
Jardiance is a prescription medication used to treat type 2 diabetes in adults. Jardiance is a sodium glucose cotransporter 2 inhibitor. These work by stopping the reabsorption of glucose by the kidney, increasing glucose excretion from the body, and lowering blood sugar levels. This medication comes in tablet form and is taken once daily in the morning with or without food. Common side effects of Jardiance include dehydration and urinary tract infections.
I sunburn super easily. It just takes a few minutes sitting in my garden or on a beach, and then a couple days later, my skin starts peeling off. It's seriously pretty gross. Not exactly the effect most people go for when they sunbathe. But what really happens when you get a sunburn? I'm Anna Rothschild, and this is Gross Science. Most burns occur if you come in contact with something hot, like when you scald the roof of your mouth on a slice of pizza. But sunburns are actually not caused by heat. Sunlight is made up of a bunch of different types of radiation. One of them is infrared radiation, which is primarily what makes sunlight feel hot. But there's also visible light, which allows us to see sunlight, and then there's ultraviolet radiation. Ultraviolet, or UV radiation, is what causes a sunburn. It can wreak havoc on skin cells by disrupting important molecules like DNA, so your body does its best to protect you from it. When UV radiation hits your skin, pigments called melanin absorb it and shield your DNA from harm. Now, melanin is present in our skin cells all the time. It's what gives your skin its particular color. It's created by special cells called melanocytes, which then distribute the melanin to other cells, called keratinocytes. Those are the most common cells in your outermost layer of skin. When your skin is exposed to UV, the melanocytes ramp up their melanin production and also transfer more melanin to the keratinocytes. This happens to varying degrees based on your genetic makeup, but that's why your skin might turn darker or tan if you're out in the sun for a while. But the melanin defense is far from foolproof. Regardless of how dark your skin is or how much you tan, some UV rays can sneak past. And when they do, they can damage your DNA. This can actually happen in a few different ways. Sometimes the radiation will directly zap your DNA, damaging it in just a trillionth of a second. Alternatively, UV rays can do something more sinister. They can actually turn your melanin against you. The radiation can make your cells produce these harmful molecules called free radicals. Now, this is a little bit complicated, but essentially, the free radicals excite an electron in your melanin. I'm excited! The melanin then bumps into your DNA and excites an electron there. I'm excited too. Which can cause the DNA to kink. Regardless of how it happens, once your cells are damaged, they start producing warning molecules, signaling that something bad is going on. If enough cells produce the signal, your body will mount an inflammatory response, sending lots of different types of blood cells to the area to stop and repair the damage. And it's this influx of blood that causes the redness you typically see with a sunburn, depending on how light your skin is. So what about the peeling? Well, your skin cells are shedding all the time without you even noticing it. You actually have stem cells in your skin that live for decades, and the stem cells produce layers of keratinocytes which fall off and are replaced over time. But those keratinocytes don't mature properly when they're damaged by UV. So instead of flaking off inconspicuously, they all clump up and peel off together. Now, your body actually has enzymes that repair a lot of the DNA damage caused by UV rays, but it can't always repair all of it. If the damage isn't fixed in one of your stem cells, you might have a real problem. When those cells replicate, they might create a mutation at the site of the damage. And depending on where the mutation occurs, this could lead the cells to become cancerous sometime down the road. Remember, even if you don't tend to burn, UV radiation can damage your DNA. So if you know you're going to be out in the sun for a while, make sure you're covered up or wearing sunscreen. For me, being outside and exploring the world is super important for my happiness and excites my curiosity. But it's way more fun to go on an outdoor adventure without coming home to disgusting, peeling skin. Ew. Got a question about sunburns? Let me know in the comments. And for more gross science, hit subscribe.
A black box warning is the strongest warning required by the FDA. This warning is reserved for prescription medications that have a significant risk for a serious or life-threatening adverse effect. This warning is based on medical studies. The black box warning is included in the labeling of the prescription medication. If you have any questions about the medications you are taking, always ask your pharmacist.
What's that sound? Depending on whom you ask, the crackle of popping joints is either the sound of sweet relief or the noxious tones of a stomach-turning habit. Really though, what's that sound? I mean, why does bending your joints in a certain way make them pop like that? Scientists have offered several explanations, including rapidly stretching ligaments and, in severe cases, actual bones grinding against each other. But the most common explanation for why your stretched out joints sound like bubbles popping is that, well, there are bubbles in there. The joints in your fingers are the easiest ones to crack, but many people also crack the joints between vertebrae in their neck and back, and even their hips, wrists, shoulders, and so on. All these joints are synovial joints, and they're the most flexible ones in your body. The space between the two bones is filled with a viscous liquid, synovial fluid, which contains long, lubricating molecules like hyaluronic acid and lubricin. Synovial fluid is more or less the texture of egg yolk, and its primary purpose is to cushion the bones and help them glide past each other. It also contains phagocytic cells that help clean up any bone or cartilage debris that ends up in the joint. But the reason it's important for knuckle cracking is that, like other fluids in your body, it contains lots of dissolved gas molecules. Knuckle crackers know that to get that satisfying pop, you stretch the joint farther than it normally goes, by bending your fingers backwards, for example. When you do that, the bones move away from each other. The space between bones gets bigger, but the amount of synovial fluid stays constant. That creates a low-pressure zone that pulls dissolved gases out of the synovial fluid, just like the carbon dioxide that fizzes out of soda when you twist open the cap. Inside the joint, the escaping gases form a bubble with a pop. But the bubble doesn't last long. The surrounding fluid presses on it until it finally collapses. The bubble's gases scatter throughout the synovial cavity and slowly dissolve back into the fluid over the course of about 20 minutes, which is why it can take a while before you can pop the same joint again. Some scientists think there may actually be two pops, one when the bubble forms and another when it bursts. Popping a joint temporarily enlarges it, which may be why dedicated knuckle, neck, and back crackers say the habit makes their joints feel looser and more flexible. But you may have heard from a concerned relative or annoyed office mate that cracking your joints will give you arthritis. A doctor named Donald Unger heard this too. So, determined to disprove his mother's warnings, he cracked the knuckles of his left hand repeatedly for 50 years. While the right-hand knuckles went unpopped. 36,500 cracks later, both hands were arthritis-free. For this selfless act of devotion to science, Dr. Unger received an Ig Nobel Prize, a parody of the Nobel Prize that recognizes wacky but weirdly fascinating scientific accomplishments. Unger wrote that his results should prompt investigation into other parental beliefs, like the importance of eating spinach. The jury's still out on that one. As for knuckle cracking, one study suggests that all that joint stretching and bubble bursting can cause your hands to swell and weaken your grip. But the biggest proven danger seems to be annoying those around you.
While both the flu and cold are caused by viruses and share similar symptoms, there are a few differences. The flu is usually worse than the common cold. Flu symptoms are typically more intense and include fever, body aches, extreme tiredness, and dry cough. People with colds are more likely to have a runny or stuffy nose. Colds usually do not result in serious health problems such as pneumonia or hospitalization, which can be complications of the flu. Your doctor can help to determine whether you have a cold or the flu. There are tests to help diagnose the flu. The best way to prevent developing a cold is washing your hands with soap and water often. Flu prevention includes washing your hands with soap and water and getting a yearly flu vaccine. Many pharmacies currently have the flu vaccine available. Ask your pharmacist and doctor any questions you may have about the common cold and flu.
What's that sound? Depending on whom you ask, the crackle of popping joints is either the sound of sweet relief or the noxious tones of a stomach-turning habit. Really though, what's that sound? I mean, why does bending your joints in a certain way make them pop like that? Scientists have offered several explanations, including rapidly stretching ligaments and, in severe cases, actual bones grinding against each other. But the most common explanation for why your stretched out joints sound like bubbles popping is that, well, there are bubbles in there. The joints in your fingers are the easiest ones to crack, but many people also crack the joints between vertebrae in their neck and back, and even their hips, wrists, shoulders, and so on. All these joints are synovial joints, and they're the most flexible ones in your body. The space between the two bones is filled with a viscous liquid, synovial fluid, which contains long, lubricating molecules like hyaluronic acid and lubricin. Synovial fluid is more or less the texture of egg yolk, and its primary purpose is to cushion the bones and help them glide past each other. It also contains phagocytic cells that help clean up any bone or cartilage debris that ends up in the joint. But the reason it's important for knuckle cracking is that, like other fluids in your body, it contains lots of dissolved gas molecules. Knuckle crackers know that to get that satisfying pop, you stretch the joint farther than it normally goes, by bending your fingers backwards, for example. When you do that, the bones move away from each other. The space between bones gets bigger, but the amount of synovial fluid stays constant. That creates a low-pressure zone that pulls dissolved gases out of the synovial fluid, just like the carbon dioxide that fizzes out of soda when you twist open the cap. Inside the joint, the escaping gases form a bubble with a pop. But the bubble doesn't last long. The surrounding fluid presses on it until it finally collapses. The bubble's gases scatter throughout the synovial cavity and slowly dissolve back into the fluid over the course of about 20 minutes, which is why it can take a while before you can pop the same joint again. Some scientists think there may actually be two pops, one when the bubble forms and another when it bursts. Popping a joint temporarily enlarges it, which may be why dedicated knuckle, neck, and back crackers say the habit makes their joints feel looser and more flexible. But you may have heard from a concerned relative or annoyed office mate that cracking your joints will give you arthritis. A doctor named Donald Unger heard this too. So, determined to disprove his mother's warnings, he cracked the knuckles of his left hand repeatedly for 50 years. While the right hand knuckles went unpopped. 36,500 cracks later, both hands were arthritis-free. For this selfless act of devotion to science, Dr. Unger received an Ig Nobel Prize, a parody of the Nobel Prize that recognizes wacky but weirdly fascinating scientific accomplishments. Unger wrote that his results should prompt investigation into other parental beliefs, like the importance of eating spinach. The jury's still out on that one. As for knuckle cracking, one study suggests that all that joint stretching and bubble bursting can cause your hands to swell and weaken your grip. But the biggest proven danger seems to be annoying those around you.
Oh, excuse me. Have you ever yawned because somebody else yawned? You aren't especially tired, yet suddenly your mouth opens wide and a big yawn comes out. This phenomenon is known as contagious yawning, and while scientists still don't fully understand why it happens, there are many hypotheses currently being researched. Let's take a look at a few of the most prevalent ones, beginning with 2 physiological hypotheses before moving to a psychological one. Our first physiological hypothesis states that contagious yawning is triggered by a specific stimulus, an initial yawn. This is called fixed action pattern. Think of fixed action pattern like a reflex. Your yawn makes me yawn. Similar to a domino effect, one person's yawn triggers a yawn in a person nearby that has observed the act. Once this reflex is triggered, it must run its course. Have you ever tried to stop a yawn once it has begun? Basically impossible. Another physiological hypothesis is known as non-conscious mimicry, or the chameleon effect. This occurs when you imitate someone's behavior without knowing it, a subtle and unintentional copycat maneuver. People tend to mimic each other's postures. If you are seated across from someone that has their legs crossed, you might cross your own legs. This hypothesis suggests that we yawn when we see someone else yawn because we're unconsciously copying his or her behavior. Scientists believe that this chameleon effect is possible because of a special set of neurons known as mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are a type of brain cell that responds equally when we perform an action as when we see someone else perform the same action. These neurons are important for learning and self-awareness. For example, watching someone do something physical, like knitting or putting on lipstick, can help you do those same actions more accurately. Neuroimaging studies using fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, shows that when we see someone yawn or even hear their yawn, a specific area of the brain housing these mirror neurons tends to light up, which in turn causes us to respond with the same action: a yawn. Our psychological hypothesis also involves the work of these mirror neurons. We will call it the empathy yawn. Empathy is the ability to understand what someone else is feeling and partake in their emotion, a crucial ability for social animals like us. Recently, neuroscientists have found that a subset of mirror neurons allows us to empathize with others' feelings at a deeper level. Scientists discovered this empathetic response to yawning while testing the first hypothesis we mentioned, fixed action pattern. The study was set up to show that dogs would enact a yawn reflex at the mere sound of a human yawn. While their studies showed this to be true, they found something else interesting. Dogs yawned more frequently at familiar yawns, such as from their owners, than at unfamiliar yawns from strangers. Following this research, other studies on humans and primates have also shown that contagious yawning occurs more frequently among friends than strangers. In fact, contagious yawning starts occurring when we are about 4 or 5 years old, at the point when children develop the ability to identify others' emotions properly. Still, while newer scientific studies aim to prove that contagious yawning is based on this capacity for empathy, more research is needed to shed light on what exactly is going on. It's possible that the answer lies in another hypothesis altogether. The next time you get caught in a yawn, take a second to think about what just happened. Were you thinking about a yawn? Did someone near you yawn? Was that person a stranger or someone close? And are you yawning right now?
Mm-hmm.